Hello everyone, welcome to my next tutorial. Today I'm going to talk about graphite and sketching with graphite pencils, and I'm going to cover the tools I like to use and why I like graphite, and a couple simple techniques that I do. It's really, I think it's like the most comfortable medium to use. I think probably because so many of us start out when we're kids. In school, you start using pencils first. And so they're very, very familiar. And I think that makes it a very easy medium to start working with. So these are some little graphite sketches out of my sketchbook. And I'm going to talk about how to do mostly a line drawing, but adding a little bit of value to do a little sculpting of the surfaces. Like you see, there's some transitional forms here. Right, this is up towards the light. Right, and then it's more round, so we know that because of the value change. And then the wing sticks out and catches more light, so that'll be the same value as the top and the wing. And so you can just do a little bit of simple sculpting of form. I grabbed a couple of other sketch examples. These are done on a bit rougher paper, paper with a bit more tooth, and so you see a lot more grain in there. But the same idea is that you start to define your forms with value, as opposed to line only. And that's a really fun way to create your shapes. And I'm not going to cover all the fundamentals, of course, of how to apply those values and know where to put the light and the dark and the core shadow and the cast shadow. That's my upcoming How to Render book, where we talk about plotting shadows and things. But I just really want to talk about why I like graphite and how to use it. So I thought I'd show a couple more examples, then we'll get into some tools and some sketching. These were some little ships, ant-inspired spaceships that I did for my book Liftoff. And those are all just graphite sketches, and you can see I'm trying to do very little line work here, but I'm trying to sculpt and show the design with mostly value changes. And that's what's so easy to do with graphite. And that's I think, if you're going to sketch with graphite, a graphite pencil, or even powder on a pad or something, take advantage of the medium. And it's so easy to do gradations with graphite that's one of the things you want to incorporate into your sketching style, is using more value and then discovering the forms through those value changes. So some tools. Okay, this is a Weeble handy pads. These are, I think, technically the lithographer's pads, but they're just all around great product. And I don't think there are any, I've never found a better substitute. So let's see what one of these looks like. So it's just a pure cotton fabric pad, and what you do, take that out, and then you will see if I unfold it, right, it's quite large. I typically just take and tear it in half, and then I usually tear it in half again. And then you'll also see, if I can get it on camera with the lighting just right, you'll see that there's kind of a smooth side, which is this one, and this one is much more textured. I tend to use the smooth side, and my tendency is to fold it once and then fold it again. Or you could do actually this way. I go the long way, fold it, and then fold it again. And the way that I hold it is like this. So I always have this little curve, and what you get is right out here at the end of your fingertip, you have a nice little crease, and that will allow you to do a hard edge or harder edge. It'll still be a little fuzzy, and then a gradation rolling off this way. It's the same way as holding a pencil, and that you hold the pencil, right, you're going to get a hard point out at that end, and then you're going to get a gradation this way. So we'll talk about that in just a second. So Weeble pads, I love those. Have a good eraser, because that's the great thing about graphite, is it's easy to erase, which is very nice. So I like a kneaded eraser. A kneaded eraser, right, is great because you can just tear it and shape it into all sorts of forms. So if I'm trying to pick out just a tiny little edge somewhere, I can actually just shape that kneaded eraser into kind of a little blade and then just touch it. And we'll do that in just a second. You can have other types of erasers. This is a big rubber eraser. Depends on the type of paper you're working on. A more durable paper, of course, is going to be easier to abuse. A paper like this that has more tooth and more grain to it, that's probably a little bit fragile, so it's not going to erase as well. Smoother papers, smoother durable papers will erase more easily back to the original white of the paper. My favorite graphite pencil is made by Tombow, and so this is the Tombow mono pencil, and this is a HB. I tend to use in the hardness scale of pencils, the higher the letter, the lower the letter, B's like 2B, 4B, 6B, those are very soft leads, so they're going to get dark very quickly, but it's going to be hard to hold an edge and a point. So I tend to work around a B level, and then H starts to get into the harder pencils, so an HB or a B are kind of my two lead weights that I like, or softness or hardness that I like. 2H, 4H, those are going into the very hard leads, and they hold a point for a long time, but they're very light, and it's kind of like sketching with a nail. It's not that forgiving. So I like a softer lead, somewhere in the middle. So for me, a B is a good one to start with. Okay, let's look at just a couple more sketches, then we'll do a little sketch, and that'll be it for this week. All right, so there's another couple little graphite sketches, and you can see the difference, right? This is one of my sketch pages out of my new sketchbook. This one's Cottonwood Arts sketchbook, and the paper is quite smooth, so it works beautifully for marker and like high-tech pen. And then these are ballpoint. So I wanted to try it with a little bit of graphite. And you can see when I start to sketch with graphite, I'm erasing back out and working more with value. So graphite actually for me is a little bit slower, but it allows me to investigate a little bit without committing to the final design. Unlike something like this, right? There's no investigation really. It's like a Sharpie pen, and you just have to go for it, and you get what you get, and you have to think ahead a little bit more. Whereas this one, you can erase a little bit and investigate lightly, and that's also a beautiful thing about graphite is you can sketch very, very lightly before you commit to the page, and then you can always erase it and make changes. So it's kind of like the traditional media Command-Z, let's say, and you can also start to show a little bit of form. So I think we're going to try and do something similar to this as a little quick demo this week. So let's, another nice thing as you start working more is to have a scrap piece of paper and to rest your hand on that, because the downside of graphite is one of its strengths is also one of its weaknesses, which is it's easy to smear and blend around, which is great when we grab a Weeble pad and we want to move around the value, but it's not so great when you want your drawing to look nice and precise and clean. So a way to keep that from happening is to rest your hand on another piece of paper. And I usually do that when I'm doing finishing. Okay, so let's do a little sketch. I'll draw a little bit larger than those sketchbook ones, just to use up the full frame. So there are usually two ways to hold a pencil, and it's in writing style or writing mode, and I usually hold the pencil this way when detailing. So if I have a, let's say we have a little shape, and I wanted to come back and add details, I would hold the pencil in this fashion, and it gives you much more control. Okay, and crosshatch, I can even crosshatch. I can't crosshatch much more than about that length of line, just sort of swinging my fingers with the pivot, sort of at my knuckles. That's about the straightest sort of the crosshatch on a short line that I can do. If I want to go and do a longer line, then I use my whole arm again and crosshatch in this fashion. And that's really my arm moving from my shoulder and with my wrist basically locked. Okay, the other way to hold a pencil, that's very common, is sort of the figure drawing style, and it's kind of upside down. It's thumb on top, and if this were a more vertical pad, my thumb would really be on top, but because it's flat on the table, I would turn it almost 90 degrees and then do my layout sketching this way. So you can see I'm using more of the side of the pencil, and you can see there's a little gradation in that. And all pencils have a built-in gradation, right? So if we have the surface of the paper, and we look at the pencil lead as a cone like this, and then there's the wood continues on. So this is the pencil lead. Okay, we're always going to get a sharper point or a sharper line here, and we're going to get a natural gradation as you apply the pressure of the pencil into the page. So a natural gradation, right, will be formed here. So if I hold this pencil down again, so this is sort of that figure drawing holding position. It's different, and I tend to work that way a lot for doing loose layouts and searching for shapes, and I tend to hold the pencil way at the end of the pencil, so it's a very light stroke when I'm searching for a shape. But you can probably, it's going to be just visible on the video, which is what you want it to be, just sort of visible for you while you're sketching. But you see, if I just lightly start to apply pressure, I get that sharp edge here with a gradation going this way. So that's a nice thing about a pencil. Now, that means if I was going to shade this, let's say I wanted to put, let's say there's a design line across here, and that was going to be a hard break line. If I wanted to shade that and add value in this portion, I would hold the pencil this way. So I would, a lot of times I'll spin around the page, just like doing line drawing, and work up to that line and then pull away in this direction. Okay, I wouldn't try to approach that edge this way. Okay, so it'd be very difficult for me to start here on this edge and then start to shade in this direction, leading right with the point of the pencil. That would be very difficult for me to do, but it's much easier to do in this direction, where you put the point of the pencil wherever you want a hard edge, right, and then pull away in this direction. So all of my gradations, right, when I'm laying in a gradation, it's always sort of going to the end of my pencil, right, not the point. So it's this natural progression from sharp edge here, where it's darker as well. This is darker, and going this direction is going to be lighter. Okay, so one of the other enjoyable things about blocking in a surface, let's just, maybe we'll just stay with that little round kind of spaceship. Now I'm kind of into drawing circular shapes. I was going to do a mech, but I'm going to change my mind. So you can just investigate and, you know, throw down shapes. You could start to throw down values as well. Doesn't have to be line only. You can, and then you start to see forms because of the value change. And so this is a nice way to lay out. You can see where I'm holding the pencils way at the very back. And I'm just searching for a shape. Now, what I'll do a lot of times is I will block out something like this, very loose. Maybe let's make this some sort of an intake here. Okay, and I just sort of feel out the shapes and the proportions, and then have the freedom to change them because I'm not really committing to anything. And the nice thing to do is to try and sketch lightly so that you have freedom to go back and make changes. Okay, that's probably good enough. Okay, once you start to see your shapes, then what I do a lot, and it's going to seem a little strange, it's almost like I erase the whole thing. So I come in with a Weaver pad because you'll have strokes that you maybe want to get rid of, or there's too much texture. And so what I do next is I just come in and start to smear this and soften it. And I'm kind of, this is my opportunity then when I come back and draw back into it to make refinements. So I kind of like get to see it first, then I soften it back. It's almost like squinting your eyes by doing this step of blurring it. So I kind of do that and just take the whole thing, soften it back. Because I know I'm going to pick out some highlights with my eraser. And then I know I'm going to come back and add some line weight, right, and outline it basically. So just took the Weaver pad and just smeared it around and almost erased it. And then a couple of ways you could work. You'd either come back with pencil again, or grab a kneaded eraser, which I have here, and I'm just going to flatten this area a bit, and I could start to pick out some of the light areas. So wherever I think that the light might be more perpendicular to a surface, I could start to pick out those areas. And so that's a nice way to work. And then because I'm changing the value, of course my brain is starting to see other forms. Now as you load up this kneaded eraser with too much graphite, you need to fold it back in, right? Otherwise it's just going to start to smear as opposed to lift the pencil off of the paper. So it's more like you're pushing and lifting. You're not really erasing it like a pink pearl eraser or something where you sort of scrub at it. This doesn't really come off. It sort of lifts. So the technique is you just go to a clean area by folding it back in, and then you just come back in and pick out the areas. It's more like you touch and lift. So it's a little bit different technique with this eraser, and I'm just basically making some random shapes here just to have some value change. Really, today's demo is all about just using graphite as a sketch medium. Okay, so you start to see it take form. And then we're just going to go in and we'll do a little bit of outlining and a little bit more value change, and we'll call it done for this week. Okay, let's add a little bit more value. Now, maybe this is a good time to put this piece of paper back here and do some outlining. And so it's not going to be all value only. I'm going to mix it up and include a little bit of line work. Now, if you don't want to get, you know, in the habit of sharpening all the time, what you can do to extend the life of this point that I'm using on the end of this pencil is twist the pencil. So it's going to be a little bit hard to see, but maybe you can see with the logo up here as it flashes, that golden logo, pick up some light. What you'll see is that as I go to a different area, I'm just putting on a little glass canopy here and just putting in a pilot, and we see some things through there. What I'm doing is that I'll spin it, because what happens is you create a flat spot while you're sketching. And some people, like if I have a drawing tool, like a straight edge or something, let's see if I have a straight edge here. Here's a, let's see. All right, take a sweep. And if I was going to make a line, let's just put a line over here for now. If I was going to use this sweep and put a line over here, what I would want to do when I draw that line is I would want to spin my pencil. Okay, so what you do is when you draw a line like that, using a tool, straight edge, I actually spin the pencil. See if I go a little slower and you can see it. See, it starts out white there, and then you actually spin that. And that gives you a much more consistent line weight, right? And if I just do this and I leave the pencil in one position, it will tend to start sharp, and then it will flat spot by the end, so that you're going to get this variation in your line weight. So if you want to have more consistent line weight and you want to preserve the sharp point longer, you spin the pencil. I know some people that can actually spin while they're drawing. I can't. So I will just try to use this, and you see I already have a flat spot. I don't know if you can see it on there, but by spinning it between strokes, I'm actually going to extend the life of this point much longer, and it really makes it more enjoyable because you don't have to stop and sharpen your pencil all the time, which can be kind of annoying and sort of lose the flow. Now, of course, you can use a mechanical pencil as well, and it has a, you know, usually a finer tip. But if it's the same weight, you know, it's just not a cone shape, it's just a cylinder of graphite versus a cone, that you get from sharpening it if it's a wood pencil. I like both. Today I'm just choosing to use a wood pencil because these are some of my favorite graphites. They're just nice and smooth, no graininess that shows up. And so just adding a few little details. And let's see, this was going to be some sort of an intake. Now you can just ignore your value there and just draw right over it, redefine a shape. Now I'm going to darken that in because I want to make it a scoop. So I'm going to spin that over, and then now I'm going to use, I'm sort of a hybrid writing style here. I'm using the writing grip, right? But I'm way out at the end of the pencil. And the reason I'm at the end of the pencil is to try and get the angle a little bit lower, a little flatter, so I could use the side of it. Now I could hold it this way, but it starts to be a little bit hard to control the pencil in those small areas right up against the line. But with practice, you can do that. And that's, it's nice because the lower I hold it to the paper, right, the larger and smoother that gradation will become. And we'll just do soft light from above. So I'm making that go inward. And let's see, let's just do this. A little soft shadow there, and then I'm going to make this pop back out like it's part of a cylinder right through here. So it's such a friendly medium because you can work back and forth into the paper. But these sketches take longer because now you're sculpting form. And let's grab a Weeble pad and smooth that out a bit so we see a little bit less of the texture of the paper. And I don't think I'm going to have time to finish this sketch today, but I want to cover all the steps that I like to do. Let's add a bit more value through here. So maybe we'll just sculpt this side body a bit. But it will cover all the grips, all the different ways to hold the pencil, all the various techniques. Now, you have to be careful. You're starting to see actually some lines show up from my previous drawing. I'm working in a pad of Borden Riley marker paper here, and I had probably done some sort of a hard line drawing or something before, and it's starting to show up. So you have to be careful of that. If your paper is dented at all from a previous line drawing, that's going to start to show up. Okay, so this may be a little soft core shadow there, soft cast shadow. This is going to go back into there, some sort of scoop. And drop that again, a little cast shadow from that. So at the end, it's kind of just making things go bump, right? Which is the simple way to add value is just start to make shapes appear because of the value change. And your brain can't help but see form with those value shifts. And as you see those value shifts, then you start to exploit them or refine them, right, and make them show up more or less. So let's say I want to push that little cast shadow and refine the edge a little bit. I'll grab the kneaded eraser and I can start to refine that edge. I'll add a little reflected light through here. Reflected light's going to be a little difficult to make it nice and smooth, so I'd maybe take it out a little bit stronger than I need first, and then just come back and hit it with the Weeble pad again to knock it back. Or you can just lightly go back over it with the pencil and crosshatch. Okay, let's add a little scoop in here. And this I'm going to push quite dark. Now the last thing when you get a finished line drawing or a finished sketch with value in pencil, what you want to do is hit it with a little bit of spray fix. So I like the Krylon matte finish or workable fixative, either one, but I tend to, if I want to seal the drawing and I'm done and I don't want it to smear and soften over time, you just hit it with a little bit of that and that will do the trick. Okay, so you see this edge is a little bit soft and this one's a little bit sharper. So what I need to do to get to this edge is I need to spin my pad get a better angle of attack here. All right, so now I can spin it, and now I've got the point side of it working up against that edge, so I can refine that edge right there much more accurately and with much more control and precision by spinning the pad around. Okay, and then that's maybe a little bit light in there, and you can keep darkening it, etc. So that's basically it. Here I'll grab the HB and let's just throw a few quick lines on this to make it a bit more finished. Actually, I go back to the B. That HB was just a little bit too hard. And you'll build up a sensitivity, and you'll find your favorite, weight to the pencil the more you sketch. So, try everything. I'd start out with a good old number 2 pencil like you might have grown up with during school as a kid. And now I'm just blocking out shapes, cut lines, panels, just freeform sketching really. And then I could come back in and I could spend more time. Maybe that's going to be a vent, so I'll add a little bit of value. So it's the same thing over and over. So just take this further and further. So say I wanted a little overlap right there, and it's a little too strong, so just soften it back with my Weaver pad. Don't worry about losing some edges. You can always pick those out again. Grab my kneaded eraser, come back in here, pick out a little shape, a little step in there that's a little flatter and it's got its orientation back up to the light. Then you can start to work in some very subtle form changes, and it's a really fun way to work. Now, just like the pencil, if I was going to try and erase to that edge, I don't want to hold my eraser like this. What I want to do is I want to spin this over, just like I did with the pencil, and I want to attack it from the other side, right? Because I can work right up to the edge, especially if I put a nice little sharp edge on this kneaded eraser, and then I can come right up to it and pick off those values, right? And just lift the value off the graphite, and I get a much, much cleaner edge that way. And then I can spin it back around, and if I want to add more value, then I hold the pencil like this and go right back up into there, and with the point, refine that sharp, sharp edge. So, hope you find that helpful. It's just the way that I like to use graphite. Let's just add a little silhouette to this thing so it feels a little bit more finished. And then just a little bit more weight here. Some sort of engine exhaust. And then engine exhaust, it's not a very, this isn't a very green tech machine, so I'm going to just scruff some smoke coming out the back. Then I'll grab the Weaver pad and then soften that off. So that would be how I would do that. If I wanted to clean up silhouette, it's the same as this sort of thing. Kneaded eraser, come back in once you're done and notch back out and clean up the silhouette. And you can get something like those sketches I showed at the beginning of this video. So I think that about covers it for the way that I like to work with graphite. It's one of my favorite mediums. It's so familiar, it just feels good, graphite on paper. But try lots of papers, excuse me, and lots of different pencils. You'll develop your favorites, and it's a really great go-to medium when you want to start to play a lot with value. Again, the things I sketch with graphite, I try to do a lot of sculpting, meaning a lot of gradations, because that's what the medium does so well. And it's nice that you could also then just come back in and do lines with the same tool, as opposed to markers. Then markers don't do lines, so you have to do marker and pen. So super flexible, and give it a try.